Hi everybody, we're pleased to be having a chat with two of the guys from Psyonix, the developers behind Nosgoth, the free-to-play vampire versus humans MMO FPS. We have with us design director Corey Davis and art lead Eric Majka. So if you guys could give us a brief intro and let us know what it is you actually do on Nosgoth.
So I'm Corey Davis. I'm game director on Nosgoth and design director at Psyonix. I'm in charge of all the design, so all the character classes and gameplay and all that fun stuff starts with me and goes through everybody else. You know, we're a really collaborative studio, so I'm kind of the guy herding all the cats, if that makes sense.
And I am Eric Majka. I am the art lead on Nosgoth and the art lead here at Psyonix. My primary role is to kind of coordinate the rest of the art team and to make sure that in general the game matches up with, you know, Legacy of Kain lore, matches up with the art style that we've developed and Legacy of Kain art style in general.
That's great, because actually leads me straight into the second question I wanted to ask. As the game is set kind of somewhere in the Legacy of Kain timeline, with the history, ideas and many of the core principles established through them, do you find yourselves restricted by that when coming up with the new content, mechanics and visuals, or do you find it more of a useful pool to dip into and find inspiration from?
I wouldn't say restricted so much as it's an interesting challenge. There's a lot of really cool stuff in Legacy of Kain that hasn't been explored. You know, if you dig into some of our backstory on Nosgoth specifically, we explore some sects and factions of humans that you haven't really seen so much of in the single-player game. So we view it as an opportunity to see some cool stuff or explore some, in more depth, certain factions, in particular the humans, that, you know, the single-player games didn't dive very deeply into for obvious reasons. But, you know, it is a challenge in its own ways. You know, we can't have hats like Team Fortress. You know, we don't have a Valentine's Day skin coming up where someone plays as Cupid, and every ability has to be thought through pretty carefully. And it'd be nice to be making a generic fantasy MOBA where any character can do anything they want at any time in some ways, but we appreciate the challenge. It focuses us a little bit.
Do you think that's more a combination of kind of the lore that's been set and kind of, you know, the copyright people trying to kind of protect it, or is it more of a don't piss off the community because they will string you up for trying to break the world that they love?
Well, there's not really a copyright concern. I mean, Square Enix owns the IP and we're working with them, so it is much more about being faithful to the IP and making the community happy. You know, we invested really early with Square in bringing those guys on board and getting their buy-in. We didn't want to stomp all over a really great franchise. So, yeah, to sum up, it's about staying faithful to a really cool franchise and not any concerns with copyright or anything like that.
Cool. So the game just went into open beta last week, and you find with different games that the whole beta process serves different purposes. So what was the purpose of your closed beta and what did you learn from it? And then also going forward, what is the aim for open beta?
I would say our closed beta had two primary purposes. Number one being game balance and design, which is, you know, we say a lot, we design something and we put it out, and within 2 hours the community is not only better at us than with it, but they also have found strategies we never think of. So it was very much a test bed in terms of, can you guys break this stuff? How are you going to play it that we don't anticipate? And the number two was just technical. It's really important to launch with a stable matchmaking system and all the bells and whistles that you expect from multiplayer these days, and that's what the last few months of closed beta were all about, was just getting all that stuff. You know, we went through a lot of tough times, and that's why we were closed beta. We had matchmaking problems, we deployed a whole new system. You know, we ended up crediting a lot of the players with a couple cool items just because they stuck with us through that. And that was really the key focus of closed beta. Open beta is really just broadening that audience and listening to feedback and saying, you know, what do you guys want out of this game now? We've delivered a solid base product, and now where do we need to go from here?
Do you have any idea of how long you're going to make the open beta, or is it going to be another one of these free-to-play MMOs where it's 2 years later, it's still an open beta? Because I think they kind of want to avoid the cries when it becomes a launched title.
Sure, it's understandable. We don't have a set date on any kind of release right now. So yeah, I don't have anything to comment on.
I'll not hold you to anything then.
When it's ready.
That's fine. When it's ready, it'll do me. So at Gamescom back in August, we actually spoke to Kat Karskens about the status of the game, and you had just released the Deceiver, and I think you maybe had released, or you were kind of on the verge of releasing the Prophet. So
Yeah.
how's the introduction of those new classes being generally received?
Pretty positively. And Eric can speak to it a little bit too, but they've been out for a little bit. I think the Deceiver came out in spring, April, May. So they've been out for a while. They both added a lot to the metagame, so that was cool, and we're continuing to refine on them. But in general, anytime we add a class, it's crazy for a week or two when everybody plays them, and then it settles down. But they've definitely added a lot. We're just about to add 2 more characters that we talked about last week on our dev stream, the Vampire Summoner and the Human Shield Bearer, that we think will add even more to the metagame and hopefully competitive play.
Yeah, I mean, to add on to what Corey said, I think in general the Deceiver and the Prophet have hit a really nice stride, I think, with the community. We watch a lot of people on stream play the game just because it's a terrific way of getting like a live feedback of what's going on, and you can see it basically in a live environment. So I've watched a lot of people play as Deceiver and Prophet, and I mean, some of them are so much better, you know, than we ever are at the game, which is great. But then you'll see a lot of people that, you know, it'll spark conversations in their chat, or it'll spark a conversation like at our main forums or the Steam community, where you get half the people saying that the Prophet is overpowered, and then the other half saying that she needs buffs. And you know, like we look at stuff like that, and in a way, it's almost kind of like a great place to be, because now you've got some people that think she's too good, or the Deceiver is too good, and some people that don't think it. So if everyone thought that it was overpowered or underpowered, then clearly there's probably a community consensus. But when it's split, then it kind of seems like, okay, well, maybe it's just because some people are just really good or really bad.
So I mean, you're kind of saying that about the balance. You kind of said with the closed beta, it's balancing the gameplay. I believe Corey, in your Meet the Team video on the official Nosgoth website, you said that the biggest challenge about designing the game is keeping things balanced. So how do you guys generally go about that, due to obviously the wide range of abilities and kind of some more support style classes? Obviously it can't just simply be, you know, who does the most damage or who gets the most kills. When people are saying what's OP and what's underpowered, how are you kind of balancing that in terms of the actual game?
2 big approaches. One is that we're a very iterative playtest driven studio, so we've been playing Nosgoth every day as a team for the last however many years we've been working on it, and that's our #1 source of feedback. We've gotten pretty good at identifying stuff. On top of that, like I said, you know, people are always play the game differently than we do, so we also rely heavily on data and metrics. So we get daily reports on, you know, what's the vampire win rate today, what classes are doing the best in kill-death ratio, what ability is being used or purchased the most. So we use a lot of data to sort of back up our assumptions. But in general, it's just, you know, especially with things like support abilities, it's really just about, does it feel good to play as, and then we figure out if it causes an unfair advantage, and that stuff's usually pretty easy to suss out. The bigger challenges actually with this game aren't specific abilities and more the balance curve across players of different skill level. Because it's an asymmetrical game, a change to improve humans at the low end for new players might completely wreck the balance of the game for very good players. Right. So that's been the challenges. We have to be very careful with what larger scale changes we make to address balance at one end of the spectrum or the other.
Yeah,
our daily playtests are also designed, I mean, we do it in a way where we pull in people from different disciplines within the development team. So, I mean, we'll have a very nice split between members of the art team, members of the programming team, the production team, the QA team. So we kind of have like a core group that will, go through, and we're the ones that play it the most, so we can kind of get like a daily consistent feedback of like, oh, I made a small change to something. How does it compare to yesterday's playtest? But we get people from all these different disciplines because everyone plays the game differently and they see the game, through their eyes differently. Like programmers will obviously see it different than the art team will. And then we'll, swap that out sometimes where we'll bring in a little focus group of people, that haven't maybe gotten in the daily playtest but are still part of the team. And it's like, okay, well, you haven't played this in a week. Tell us what it feels like. Tell us what you think has changed. And they kind of come at it with a fresh set of eyes. So both ways of approaching the daily playtest, are designed to kind of hit the more long-term players as well as the new players, kind of mimicking what we have in the community.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. So basically, data, playtests, different set of eyes is what we're getting at. And just I presume just getting a general feel of whether something feels like it's a bit too much.
Yep.
Cool.
Or too little.
Yeah. So you just mentioned the summoner and the shield bearer. Can you tell us a little about those classes and how they came about, how they're going to fit into the different factions?
Sure. Do you want to do the summoner like short?
Yeah, I can give you the quick backstory to the summoner. So all of the vampires that we have, in staying true to the Legacy of Kain series, there were different clans that were under Kain, who obviously the series is named after. And each one of them in the original games had a personality. And it was something where, if you really like dig into the lore, you'll really see the differences between not only how they look, but also, the way they acted and their mannerisms. So we tried to play that up with each of the classes. So we would take elements of those classes and figure out, how can we make something based off of this, based off of, Clan Zephanim, in that case, which is the Deceiver we were just talking about. So we figured out, how we could make something based off of the general personality of that clan, both, well, I guess their physical appearance as well as their personality, because both kind of play into the gameplay side. So the summoner was one where we kind of tapped into her clan and kind of figured out like, okay, she's kind of the backstory basically is that their bodies are falling apart just from all the experimentation and stuff that they've been doing to themselves to kind of make themselves powerful. So she's kind of falling apart, and is trying to basically hold herself together like Frankenstein style. So the much later timeline, which would be like Soul Reaver 1, because we're actually before Soul Reaver 1 in the history.
Yeah.
At that point, like, they've really fallen apart. They're almost like little zombies walking around, for lack of a better term. So we kind of played that up like visually, but we also kind of are focusing on her skill set, kind of playing with that as well, where, we try doing skills that, are not only going to be fun and will add a new element to the gameplay, because we don't want every character class to just feel like a different looking version of each other.
Yeah.
We want her to add something completely new. So we, thought of doing this pet class because of all of the experimentation and whatnot she's done to herself, that's caused her to look the way she does. We kind of figured that, like, okay, well, maybe she's kind of breaching into some, dark arts that she really shouldn't have. So that kind of, ended up leading into her summoning these things, from beyond. And then we kind of played up the pets that they're not, your typical MMO wolf pet, because that's just not going to make sense. So we went with stuff that, are these like twisted creatures that also play into basically how she looks. They're just kind of an extension of that.
Cool.
Functionally, the the headline is, pet class, a little bit more ranged capability than our other vampires. We're never going to have a true ranged vampire or a true melee human, but she does have some ranged powers, and her pets allow her to engage at a distance a little more than other classes. So we're really interested to see how that affects the balance and the meta game.
Excellent. And shield bearer?
Shield bearer wise, we really wanted to introduce a tankier class that wasn't just a prototypical sword and shield character. There's been a lot of demand for that type of character. And we really wanted someone that could, if not go toe-to-toe in melee with a vampire, at least be a little bit harder to take down. Right now, our humans have a lot of capabilities to disrupt a vampire, but if they get up on you, you're pretty much toast by design. And he's got a blocking mechanic with his shield that actually allows him to absorb a number of hits, and that really changes sort of the calculus of how vampires approach him in a team fight in general, when there's suddenly someone that you have to outflank or outmaneuver to kill reliably. And to keep with the theme of range versus melee, he actually has these throwing weapons that range from Kama, which is sort of like a handheld sickle scythe thing, to actual axes. And he's all about throwing these big, heavy axes and embedding them in vampires' faces. And they're actually really satisfying to use. So we thought it turned into a pretty good balance. And we're currently tuning him for release. He's going to fit somewhere between all of our characters can kind of choose between offense and support to some level, and he's no different. He has loadouts where he's shield slamming and judging people to death, and he has loadouts where he's buffing his teammates for health regen and speed and creating a shield wall to protect people. So, cool. In general, going for a variety of gameplay styles, but also a little bit heavier and more tanky than the average human.
Do you find when, with the design process for, not just the classes, but, any new content, mechanics, maps, or whatever, do the ideas come first, or rough sketches, or just looking at what you can take out of the lore and what seems like it might be cool, or does it start with a more mechanics-based process and think, okay, we want to have this, how can we get it from the lore we've got available?
It varies character to character. Eric talked a lot about how the Summoner came into being. In a lot of ways, she was driven by knowing we wanted to make a character of this clan, and what would that clan do in Nosgoth. The shield bearer was more driven by we wanted a shield-based tank character, and then, what does that look like in the lore? So I would say both directions, depending on what we're looking for at the time and what presents itself.
Yeah.
The next vampire, we have one clan left that has fairly specific characteristics, so that will probably be at least partially driven by what makes sense for that clan, rather than a specific need in the gameplay.
Cool. So obviously, when are we expecting to see the shield bearer for playing?
I believe end of the month, but yeah, we're gonna see how the Summoner goes and if we wrap him up. But yeah, end of next month.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Last question for me. Obviously, you're just the newest thing you're announcing is the shield bearer, but the moment you announce it, it's old news and everybody wants to know what can we expect next.
Yeah. So we're about to release a sort of timeline of tentative features to have a little bit more transparency to the community, and that will detail stuff in more detail there. But the sort of highlight features that we're looking to get out as soon as possible are a spectator mode for tournaments and esports, so people can log in and watch a competitive match without actually participating, so observer tools and all that fun stuff. A crafting system that allows you to break down existing items into parts, and you'll also receive those just from playing matches, and you can use them to enchant existing weapons to a higher quality or re-roll stats that you don't want on those weapons. And I believe beyond that,
new map.
Yeah, new map. So Eric can talk at length about it, but it's set in the Clan Turl and the Tyrant, his hometown, basically. And so it's got a pretty cool, different vibe than any of our maps so far.
Yeah, our original maps, we started with a bunch of human territories because they, were I mean, we're not just trying to regurgitate Legacy of Kain stuff that's already been done. The whole series in general has such an immense storyline. There's no sense in like, oh, okay, well, let's just make the same thing that they made in the last 4 games. Like, we want to expand the story. It's not a recreation. It's not an HD remake of Soul Reaver 1. So we started with some areas, that weren't really touched on before, but were, areas that were, if you really dig into the lore, it's there. So now we're kind of expanding, and our last map that we had released was a vampire map as well, for Raziel's clan. So now we're branching out into Terrell's clan, as Corey said, and it's giving us another way, kind of like I said with the character classes of showing their personalities. We wanted to reflect the same thing with the maps. So this map, as we showed on like the dev stream, the way it looks is a lot different than Raziel's clan map. It's and it's designed that way. Because I mean, not only will it add some variety to how the maps look and play, but we want to be as true to those things as possible. And with this map, it gave us a nice chance to go through and add in some of the larger landmarks that people would recognize from the original games. So we're kind of a lot closer now, to some of the things like the Silence Cathedral and the Smokestack that people would recognize.
So you're trying to make your own unique stuff, but with an homage to some of the stuff that's been before, type thing. A bit of a tip of the hat.
Yeah, I mean, we're not making a single-player game. I know a lot of people aren't terribly thrilled with that, but I mean, we like it because it's a terrific way of showing off just how deep Legacy of Kain as a series is. There's so much there, and not even stuff that was just in the game. So much stuff that has come out from the original creators after the fact. So, we're super excited to have been given the opportunity to expand on that, terrific storyline, and we do everything we can to add in story elements. Yeah, you don't have cutscenes, when you finish a level because it's not a single-player game. But if you really look at the maps, like there are little story elements that are in there, like this building, is used for that, or why are these, boxes here? What happened? Where was there a big fight here? That kind of stuff. Yeah. And you can read like the lore on the blog. It kind of expands on what you see in the maps, but yeah, I mean we're not rewriting Legacy of Kain, obviously, but we are trying to expand on all the groundwork that everyone laid before us.
Fantastic, guys. If there's anything else that you would like to add?
I don't think so. No.
You're supposed to say everybody should try it out because it's now in open beta and everybody can go and try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's free to play.
Free to play. Fantastic, guys. Well, thank you very much for answering my questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll have the article up soon. So,
Awesome, thank you.
Have a good one.
Alright, guys. I'll see you later.
See ya.
Yeah.